Good morning and welcome to Making It in Moreland. Thank you for joining us for a yarn about global First Nations arts practice. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm zooming in from, the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and their cultural heritage, their beliefs and continuing a relationship with the land on which we reside. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal sovereignty was never ceded, and I extend our respect to our First Nation artists and other people that are present here today. This panel will be led by Kimba Thompson and featuring guest First Nations artists Ngioka Bunda-Heath, Veisinia Tonga, Astrid, Mendez and Gina. Our panellists will discuss their contemporary arts practice, the importance of culture and community, the impacts of creating art within colonisation and the future as they see it. Allow me to introduce you to Kimba Thompson. Kimba is a Wiradjuri woman and is the founder and director of Blak Dot Gallery in Brunswick, a non-profit, Indigenous-run artist space with a specific agenda to promote and showcase the works of global contemporary Indigenous artists. Kimba will be introducing our guest artist shortly. Thank you, Kimba, for joining us. It's over to you.
Good morning. I also too would like to do an acknowledgement to country on behalf of Blak Dot Gallery and myself. I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Wurrung, the Bunurong and surrounding nations of the Kulin, elders past and present. Thanks for meeting with us today. It's not the way that we usually meet for a yarn, but I think everybody's got a cup of tea and we're gonna, cruise on with that. Today, for myself in particular, I just really wanting to yarn about, our creative practices, what we're doing, how we work within community and our community practices and, where we've been recently and where we've come out of and what does the future hold for us pretty much. So I might just start with Gina actually, and I might just get Gina to introduce yourself, your practice and your collective practice, because I know you're also involved in a collective as well.
Sure. So my name is Gina Ropiha. I am a Ngāti Kahungunu and Ngāti Kawa woman. Thank you so much, both of you, for acknowledging country for us. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Moreland land, or I'm sitting on it. And I also want to acknowledge Blak Dot as well and the Moreland City Council for these opportunities that we've been given. My practice it's interesting, I suppose, in that it's sort of sporadic. So I am a teacher as well as an artist, so I kind of make work when I'm not working, but what I make mostly is three-dimensional work. And I use a lot of found and recycled objects. That's something I'm very, very interested in doing. I'm very mindful, particularly as I'm not living on my own land, of what I put into the space. And I think it's important to be as respectful as possible of where I am. So I'm really interested in things that people discard and things that people kind of disregard as well. And things that are ubiquitous and familiar and often overlooked, because I think they're actually quite special, because we're finding this out again, that what's around us is what sustains us, and often we just don't value much really, and having to have your life so reduced really makes you consider what's important and who's important. So yeah, that's a lot of what my practice has to do with. And because I moved over a long time ago from New Zealand, but packing yourself up into a suitcase and moving makes you look at what you bring with you, and then what you do, and how you put down roots, and if you put down roots. And so I suppose that is a lot of what my practice is about too. And so a lot of what I have been making up until this point is portable and is often wearable.
Awesome. And Gina, you're also involved in you have a collective practice as well, yeah?
Yeah, and it's interesting actually, because
yeah.
after this meeting, I'm going to the Weaving Circle Zoom meeting. So ordinarily we'd be meeting just down the road in the old Carlton Railway house. but yeah, that's a very significant source of health and well-being for me. And I know that you want to talk about community and culture, but you know, plugging into that space and being surrounded by beautiful, intelligent brown women who want to share their cultural practices, particularly their making practices, has been, you know, a source of great joy, but also, you know, strength and vitality, and just reaffirming what's important.
Thanks, Gina. So Astrid, I might get you to talk a little bit about your art practice. Yeah?
Yeah, sure. I'm a puppeteer and graphic designer too. I work, well, this last year was a little bit exceptional for me because I had to stay in one place, which is not very usual for me. I travel a lot, and I take my puppet experience to different places. Yeah, because of the exceptional circumstances now, I've been working more in trying to get other skills, to developing other skills for my practice. So I've been learning lately all the about oral narration, storytelling, and also I guess being more aware of how to inhabit this territory from through my practice. So I've been working a lot in the garden lately, and the garden brought to me some insights about how I would like to develop my practice in the future. So I've been working a lot in poetry lately, in working haiku, which is Japanese poetry, which is based in the Zen meditation and the contemplation of nature. So that's yeah, that's been very helpful for me to have another understanding of the ways that I want to develop myself as a human, but also as a professional. Then I also been working with cyanotype photography, and yeah, I think that my puppet practice has been a little bit. I stopped a little bit, I would say, because there is not much. There haven't been many events where to present, and I'm a bit reluctant to go into the online scene, because it feels that I really need the contact with people, and it's such a intimate and is miniature, so that emotional link that I got with the audience is very important for me. I can't, the screen is not a place where I would like to continue. So I just stopped, and it's been a time for me to learn other things and explore in other areas, which is, it's been great anyway, like just trying to find other expressive ways. Yeah.
And Astrid, you're part of Collectiva? Would you like?
I am, yes. Part of my dear Colectiva de Aviala. We are a collective of mestizas, migrants from Latin America. We're a group of women and sexual gender dissidents who gather in to read mainly, but also to embroider our ideas in this kind of textile that you see in the back. We also discuss, prepare food, and yeah, we craft our ideas in different ways. Now we we've been working with the garden too, so yeah, we've been trying to find ways to connect with the territory, because that's one of the questions that is constantly coming to us, and like, how can we inhabit this territory more honest, in an honest way and humbly. So yeah, we've been gathering for 4 years already, and we are 10 people at the moment. Yeah, so it's been great to have a Blak Academy as a host for the last 2 years, I think, Kimba. I can't remember how long we've been.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of you knocking on the door one day when I was at installing an exhibition and just asking, is there space for a collective here? And I said, well, you know, if you'd like to come in and amongst an exhibition, then that's fine. And then you started gathering every Wednesday night amongst whatever exhibition was there. And for me, that was a pleasure. You know, I'd be working back late and I'd have a smell of food coming up the loft, as well as there'd be a glass of red wine. So it was a beautiful thing. But yes, we do have a little home now at Blak Academy for, you know, everybody to do. I'll come back and ask you more a little bit about the collective. Vei, I'll move over to Vei. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your collective practice? Yep. Oh, your practice and then collective practice,
So my arts practice is based around kakala. Kakala in Tonga is plant material. And basically we plant or flowers, and how we weave it together tells stories of country or with your origins and legends, and it's representative of where you come from, legends and so on. I've had... So I'm a writer as well. So my background is in journalism and in floristry. I took up floristry as a single mum after, you know, because I found that it was something that I could do around my children. And because most florists are run by women, they're very understanding of when you have to run and do, you know, school drop-offs, pickups, and they're flexible about, you know, working around your, you know, the demands of, you know, being a mother. So I took up floristry, but only recently, or a couple of years ago, you know, growing up, we were always making costumes for dancers and stuff, and that's part of our, you know, it's just a cultural way of being for us, you know, weaving gahoa or leis. And a couple of years ago, I was looking at the intersection of the two, and also storytelling for us in Tonga. Weaving gahoa is about storytelling, telling of place and origins and legends, and in placing. So if you see a costume, a dancer's costume, it basically places them in, you know, by the plant material that they use, the way that it's woven together, and so on. So I wanted to explore that as you know, an art form, and also to, you know, to come from an understanding that cultural arts practices that have existed for thousands of years are, you know, an art form that was often sort of not recognized in the West, you know, often kind of like, you know, put under the primitive arts kind of umbrella, and, you know, collected in natural history museums as something that is, you know, but I just wanted to, you know, to come from an understanding personally that our cultures are living cultures and they continue to evolve. We continue to do things as we've always done for thousands of years. We continue to create, you know, the recognition of it as art is only very recent. And, you know, I wanted to continue and evolve a practice that is based on cultural practice. So that's where my kakala art comes from. And you know, as far as collective practice, I'm co-founder of Pacific Storytellers Collective. I think we've grown to like 30 plus people now. So we initially had a residency at Blak Academy, and we met there in person a few times. But because of the initial lockdown, we went online. And so we now meet once a month. And it's basically storytellers. And I use the word storytellers as opposed to a writers group, in recognition that we all tell stories differently. We tell stories through dance, through, and we have an oral history tradition, and there are different ways of telling a story as opposed to just writing it down. So, so we meet once a month and we respond to a prompt that is set. We all take turns setting a writer's prompt or a storytelling prompt. And we meet once a month on Zoom, and the whole idea around the group is about supporting each other in our creative practices and keeping it, and kind of like forcing us to practice. So, and it's fun, and once a month we get together online and on Zoom and we respond to whatever the prompt is. We can either just tell an oral story, or we can, some people send in little films, and, and it's basically providing a space where we don't have to put everything that we say in context, where everyone has an understanding of the cultures that we all come from, and, and we don't have to do that labor of explaining something first before we, tell a story. And so, and it's been really powerful to just have that space where we all just get it,
And Vei, you also part of another smaller group, Manava, yeah?
Yeah, so Manava in Tonga is breath. It's also womb, life and womb, or, interchangeable. And we've broken into two words, and it comes from the origin of the word mana and va. Mana is power, magic, whatever, and va is the relationship or the space between us. So basically, a group of us Tongan women decided that realized that we had a responsibility to the next generation. And so we set up Manava as a vehicle for facilitating the transfer of knowledge from elders to younger ones. And we do this via running free workshops that are accessible for our kids and people who are interested in learning cultural knowledge. And, so we run these workshops out of Blak Academy.
I'll come back to those workshops, Vei. Yes, it'll come into our little play. Ngioka, can I get you to talk about your little arts practice?
So I'm Waka and Nugi on my mother's side from Queensland, and Merri-bek on my father's side from New South Wales. I'm an Indigenous dancer and choreographer who likes to tell stories and give voice to the voiceless. I was very fortunate enough that my parents gave me their PhDs to turn into contemporary dance works. And so my first two shows that I've created were based on my matrilineal lineage and my patrilineal lineage. And yeah, that's kind of me.
How long have you been dancing for?
Oh, like 23 years, 24 years now.
You look young as.
Black don't crack.
I love it. So maybe we'll just continue that you're talking about Merri-bek there. We'll just continue with your just recent show, part of Yurumboy Festival. But the show, do you want to talk about the show? But I also just want to kind of step back into the development of the show. So it was first to start with the show itself was going to be presented as part of Next Wave, in 2020. And we all went into lockdown, What did that mean for you in the development of that show?
Well, it was really hard, obviously, because in my works, telling my parents' stories and of their parents and their great-grandparents, it was really significant for me to be able to share the stage with my parents and tell their stories and share their stories together. And so with my father being on Merri-bek country in New South Wales, it was impossible to get him down here, obviously with him being high risk as well. And so it was really hard. I kind of just had to pause it for the whole year, but that was actually really good in hindsight, I think, because then that allowed me to have more conversations with my father and do more research in creating the work.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Merri-bek, and then we'll talk about the performances later? Yeah.
Sure. Well, in my father's PhD, he wrote about, and he wrote a book before that called Beyond the Lands of Thomas Dick. And Thomas Dick was a colonial photographer who took posed and staged photographs of my ancestors, predicting pre-colonisation. And so, they were all posed and doing these ones and fishing and in a canoe. And my great-grandmother was actually 12 years old and photographed naked during this collection. And these photographs are all around the world in museums, and they are often dated wrong, and the subjects are unnamed in them. So so I took these photographs and my father's research, where he named not only majority of the subjects, but he also did research and found out about their descendants from the photographs to now. And so with Dad, I spoke about the subjects and what it kind of means to me and Dad now. Yeah, and I also showed modern photographs of my family to juxtapose, the photographs that Thomas Dick took.
I'll come back to that show in a minute there. So I'll go back to you, Gina. Yeah, Gina, because we've just touched on lockdown there, for you as an artist coming out of lockdown, maybe if you wanted to yarn a little bit about your feelings during lockdown when we went into that first one, but coming out of that, and also having a residency to be able to create work again.
Yeah, thank you, Kimba. I think it's really interesting actually, because a couple of people have touched on time just when they were talking about their practices, and I really relate to what Ngioka was saying about her dad and not being able to, connect with your people, because so much of that is about nourishment and just being able to, sometimes just being near someone, sitting with someone is really important in terms of your smiling Ngioka about, just being okay. And I think particularly, we were talking about weaving circle before, one of the things that is so helpful about that is that it completely normalizes me again, because I'm not in my own country, I'm not around my family, and so when I'm with those women and when I'm at Blak Dot, I'm normal. The rest of my life, from when I wake up to when I go to bed, I'm not normal. I'm kind of the other, or I'm different or whatever. And, being disconnected from those things that make you feel whole and real was really hard. And I actually was I had a show in New Zealand, or I was going to send a bit of work over, and it was the show that, you did at Blak Dot that was being shown at Paltai. And that was really hard, I think, because it just that was right at the beginning of lockdown in March when that couldn't happen, and it kind of just made it very real that I wasn't going to be able to go home, I wasn't going to be able to do all the things that I need to do to be well. So that was profoundly difficult. I can't really put it into words, but also, because it was the first time for everybody doing that thing, being in lockdown. No one really understands what that means, and we're so lucky in our lives in Australia.
Yeah, your microphone's disrupt. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
All right, we're so lucky in Australia and New Zealand. We have a huge amount of freedom, and our lives are very full, and we have access mostly to most things. And so, yeah, when those things are restricted, it is very, it's so noticeable. And so, I don't know. Yeah, it's restrictive, obviously, physically, but it's also spiritually and mentally kind of containing. I don't like that. But yeah, being able to work, interestingly, being able to work in Blak Dot, like the whole of the gallery, was intensely liberating, but also terrifying as well, I have to say. But it was a wonderful experience to just be able to do whatever. And I think there's a question about the impacts of colonisation, and I just think one of the things that's hard is the kind of commercialization and capitalization of artistic practice, and this focus on outcomes, and the opportunity to have an open residency like that where there is no definite outcome, it's just about being and making, is a great privilege. So thank you.
Gina, the challenges of that open space, I know for myself, one of the things that you wrote into your thing was to be challenged. Yeah. And exploring and experimenting, I think, with different mediums. For you, I know there was that look of, oh my God, it's such a big space. But to be able to just sit with your work and do that, I know you haven't quite finished that, and what the outcome is, we've kind of got an idea, but there's a lot of time to develop now between that. Did you come up with new ways or new things that you want to explore?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was great to be able to work on a much larger scale and to work on pieces that contribute to a whole. So several potential artworks being one artwork, but also having the little media space, I can't remember what you call it, the smaller room, as a place where I might do something like look at having a sound sculpture, or possibly animation would be really interesting. During lockdown, the first lockdown, I had the privilege to work with Pame and Vei and Sarita, and we were working on something. We got to meet once, and it was wonderful. We're at Blak Dot around the fire, and we were looking at the idea of decolonising sound. That's kind of what came out of that meeting. And then being locked down again, I think the residue of that just sat with me for a long time, and I made a lot of drawings that, interestingly, I didn't know what to do with them, but I came back to during the residency just recently, and sort of figured out what those things mean. You are asking about the challenges of COVID, and I think being restricted so much and being enclosed all the time meant that it's very difficult to process and work through what's going on in your normal life. And I feel like only just at the end of that residency I'd gotten through all of last year, just sort of pushed it out, physically out of me as drawings or whatever, and then I could get on with now. So it's interesting, like you said, to be back in a similar position, but not necessarily to feel the same way.
I was thinking, Ngioka, with yourself being a performer, to be in restrictive space, you have to, movement is a big part of you. Yeah.
Yes, and even a little bit this year, and definitely a lot last year, having to dance 1.5 safely and wearing a mask. It's really hard to connect to your breath when there's just something there. So it's not ideal, but I guess better safe than sorry.
Vei, I might go over to continue, and I'll come to you, Astrid, because you also lead up to where we're going. Vei, so during lockdown, you also had an event organised around the fire event, but it was part of a Fringe Festival. and it was, where is it? Oh, existing on two planes. Do you want to talk about that event? And then obviously we had to change plans, being that, again, not being able to come together.
Yeah. So, I mean, like Gina said, that just getting together, I think, is so, I think as people from collective cultures, being isolated is really much more difficult because we're so used to being in each other's spaces and holding each other through community all the time. And I think to be in lockdown is much more, well, I mean, it's difficult for everyone, but I think it's more difficult for people who spend a lot of time in each other's spaces with extended families and, you know, with huge friendship networks. So it was really hard for us, but we shifted to online platform really well as a collective. And because the storytelling, I mean, there's an element of it that doesn't kind of translate so well online. It's like the laughter and the eating together and all that stuff. You just can't do that online. It doesn't work. But yeah, so we just went online on Zoom once a month, and then to be part of that project, it was so empowering. For the first time, we actually took what we did, you know, as a collective public. And, you know, we were part of Fringe Festival, and it was so powerful. At the end of the readings, where we all did the prompt was existing on two planes, about how First Nations people tend to, well, not tend to, but we live not just in a material presence, but also on a spiritual plane. And we're aware of both constantly, you know, like a bird will stand there and sing a song, and then we'll think, is that a message from the ancestors, or, you know, or is it an omen for something? So we don't, and it's part of our everyday life, but we take it for granted. So that was what the prompt was. And then we did the readings, and it was so powerful to just sit within our own voices, not have to perform for the white lens, which is something that a lot of artists, First Nations artists, struggle with. To remember that to center ourselves in our cultural practice and not have to, and it's difficult because we're working in white institutions. So we're kind of morphing ourselves into, or twisting ourselves out of shape half the time to try and fit into this, you know, that kind of worldview. But for us to be able to just do us, and it was so empowering. At the end, we all felt like superheroes, because we just ran it straight, you know, like this rugby terminology. We didn't have to edit ourselves, you know.
There was also a collaboration with the collective. We're talking of two projects here, but they're under one umbrella, but individual as well as collectives.
Yeah.
But for me, like we've got it up online on our Blak Academy under our blog page there, that particular project existing on two planes. But it was beautiful because it was also through media, which was performed, or dance that was performed. There was poetry, there was, you know, spoken word, and then there was readings, you know. There was a beautiful, strong group that came together, and I remember the excitement. So the collective also contributed to that, Faye?
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's the beauty of Blak Academy, is that we have all these different community groups who then can share skills, share ideas, and I'm excited to working or collaborating with the collective more in the future. And then, you know, as our relationship sort of intertwines or weaves together. But yeah, so we had the Collectiva girls contributing to it, and it's part of our joint project. And, you know, it's amazing how we learnt about each other. It was strange, like when we were writing the grant process, we had this conversation between Sari and I, where, so we did a Google Doc that everyone contributed to. And then you know, Pacifica Collective, we were quiet in the space. And then the Collectiva were writing things. So, I mean, all amazing people. And then Sari was like, why are the island girls not doing anything. And this is how we learn, you know, to work together. It's like just by working together, you know. And then we were like, well, in our culture, it's actually, if someone does something and it's fine, then you leave it. You don't go in there and edit it and change it. It's rude, you know, like we don't do that. And then we were saying from the Latina perspective, it's like, because they come from a much more densely populated country, it's vying for space, you know, whereas we come from little islands and you have to get along with everyone because there's nowhere else to go, you know. The islands from here to here, so you've got to learn to share space. And whereas they come from, like, I guess, I mean, this is our conversation around from densely populated space where you have to fight for space. So we had to then understand each other. It's like, no, actually that's our way and that's your way. And, you know, both were fine and, you know, legitimate ways of being, but just through the act of doing something together, we learned something about each other's cultures, which was amazing.
And Astrid, can you talk a little bit? I mean, really important for you as a collective is about that coming together, because you come from all over the place, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And during COVID, I know it was really important to have that connection for yourselves. How did you deal with that as a collective? Because I know the garden became a vocal point at Siteworks there for you to also focus on.
Yeah. I guess that the chakra, the garden for us has been a very important project to keep us feeling that sense of the belonging, belonging to this beautiful group of people, this community, this, you know, this territory. And I guess that it was the idea of the garden of cultivating our vegetables, and was kind of responding to these times and how the COVID was evolving, and how we were seeing this would come in the future, like our ideas and how we want to relate to nature in our lives, and how we want to inspire others to do that too. The chakra it was a project that we started to think during COVID, and then as all the restrictions were coming up, we creatively came up with ideas on how to keep that space alive. That was a very beautiful way to come up with this sense of trust in each other, like how we continue this, and keeping this place and watering, looking after the plants while we can't gather all together. So it is still on, and now we're developing this event for winter solstice, which is part of the same the process, how it's been continuing. I think that being in isolation was the garden was very important, but also was important to keep us grounded, because we were each of us, we were in our homes and trying to keep the meetings through Zoom, but it was we could see that we were kind of tired to do that, to being on the screen, and most of us work on the screen the whole day, so it was very hard to keep our meetings on reading, but still we did it, and also we had this all our baby in the garden. Like we wanted to really see that growing despite the circumstances. So yeah, that keeps our sense of responsibility in the land and how we want to link to this space. So yeah, it was hard. It was hard, but I think we managed really well. We did. We came up with more ideas, and I think that coming from Latin America, we are always in crisis. We kind of tend to know how it is, especially with artists in Latin America. It's crisis, like completely. So we are in this mode all the time. So for us, it's not. I mean, it's hard, of course, because this is a completely new circumstance. None of us lived this before. But I guess we know how to manage and navigate these kind of circumstances because it's part of our everyday life over there.
I think that in particular that time, I know myself, I was scrambling. I didn't have a garden. I was like, I couldn't have access to site works where the beds were. And I'm like, I need chickens. I need this. Who lives close to me? I'm going to build a chicken coop. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm just going to break into Siteworks and I'm going to do the garden. There's garden beds there,
Yeah.
But yourselves in particular, like for us, even myself, I don't have a big family network here in Victoria, but I have a sense of family through Blak Dot and community.
Mm-hmm.
I know for myself during that period, I went down a space where I am so used to community being around me and being part of multiple conversations and gatherings and stuff like that. That was full on, but I was feeling for your collectiva, the stuff that was going on around the world and yourselves being locked down, and you had no choice, being locked down in one place and having to come together stronger as a community. And for me, I think I look at all of us here, but food is also very much part of us and our cultures and coming together. And when you said, do you reckon we can, work in, I said, sure we can, let's take over. And we took over that garden pretty quickly. Not took over, we encouraged some planting really quickly. Let's just own that garden in that way, or yourselves, And yes, a project, and it's coming up really soon that hopefully people will be able to attend, is not far away. But we'll just keep the yarning going. I'll go back to Ngioka there. Ngioka, when you've obviously just finished a sold out show during Year and Boy, and we say sold out in the way because we did have restrictions, even though we were sneaking a few extra in here and there, and there was a lineup to get in. But how important was that to have your dad here and to have space to do that? Like, I was there each night in that in the performing space. I was either outside or inside, but just having your dad there and I know we did Auntie Di came and we did a welcome to country to welcome your dad on to country first. And then for him to be able to master the fire every night. Yeah. And your dad's name is John? Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. It was so special. Very, very grateful. And I guess, like I kind of mentioned, my process is to be very collaborative and tell stories with my parents, and this one was with my dad. And I was very aware, like V said, about the white lens and having to dance around photographs that were very much taken through the white lens. And so having it at a First Nation Arts Festival in a First Nation arts venue, or First Nation gallery, and being supported by Arts Moreland was just so wonderful. And I guess I just kind of I've been dancing for so many years now, and I'm very comfortable in that space and in that performance world. But in order to make Dad, John, comfortable, I really wanted to just let him be the elder and to hold space. And it was really significant for me, I guess, to protect First Nation audiences as well as my dad and myself, to have the Wurundjeri welcome first and foremost, and then getting Dad to do a smoking ceremony before every performance, because obviously the photographs were of the deceased. And then also just culturally, even though Dad and I yarned throughout the show and often, made jokes and made it lighthearted, it was also pretty heavy political topics that we were talking about. And so, it was really significant and important for me to do that show with a smoking ceremony at the beginning that allowed the audience to be cleansed through the smoke before they entered the gallery, before they saw the photographs, before they watched me perform Dad's, smoking and Dad's stories that he wrote.
I think your dad was sooking by the time he left there. He was loving that community and that centre of attention each night too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he definitely was not shy.
He was chatting to everyone every night. He did leave with a Blak Dot t-shirt on, looking quite fine in that. Up to promote it, which was cute. For you, too, how do you think the audiences, took your show?
Really well.
Yep.
Like I received such wonderful feedback, and obviously I had each show sold out, so that was really beautiful. Just because I wanted to share story and to educate audience, I didn't want them to, they want to do the typical, fourth wall dance show thing, white lens thing. So I got the audience involved throughout the work, and it was actually quite beautiful because I got them up dancing with me at the very end, and every night every audience member got up and danced with me to finish the shows, which was really special. And I was had planned for audience not wanting to be involved, but everyone did, so it was great.
So Vei, when we came out of the COVID stage, you got another you ran a few workshops for community. How important were those workshops, and why, what was involved in those workshops?
Okay, so as part of the manawa that I spoke about before, and taking on that responsibility of facilitating the transfer of knowledge, we ran some workshops on kubesi printing. Kubesi in Tonga and throughout, is the Tongan word for the patterns that we use on tapa. So basically it's a pattern that tells a story. So each tapa is made to tell a story or to mark a special occasion. They're usually commissioned. So someone will commission a kokaanga, which is a collective of women in the village, to make a piece to, mark a wedding or for a significant event. And then on that tapa, they will draw various patterns and we have ancient patterns and ancient name patterns. And then we also have new patterns that people will write that, that are significant and tell a story. So we did a workshop around tapa, and basically to teach young Pasifika about that tradition of telling story through patterns, and for them to understand the old, and then to understand that they can evolve this stuff. Our cultures are not dead. We're not artifacts. We're actually a living culture. So we're still practicing it. Back on the island, this stuff is continual. Things still, we're not museum artifacts. We're actually living cultures. So I wanted to facilitate that. And then, so what we found from it is like, you know, that sense of creating as a collective is part of our culture. You know, we get together and we weave in the weaving houses or the carving. And I think it's something that's missing in our lives. And then being able to get together and to just make was just so empowering, and it was so beautiful. And I got so much feedback, and I got people who traveled like 2 hours on a train to come just to sit together and make something. And it was just, and at the end of it, they were like, oh, you know, we didn't realize that this is what's missing in our lives. And having that creative space where we can make as collectives, which is part of our DNA, you know, it's part of our genetic memory, I think. And it was just so powerful to do that. So, you know, I loved it. And, you know, I used some of the funding to buy the tools for us to continue doing this.
Yeah, so there was tools, and I'll just go back to our food thing again, but just as much as you are spending on materials, we also need to feed the community, yeah? Food is very important to
very important
as well.
And that was the thing, like you don't, and also for us, you can't just do cheap little sandwiches. You always have to put your best. When you're receiving people, you have an obligation to present and to feed them with the best that you can, you know, put together. And so, you know, eating together and creating together is, you know, it's who we are, you know, it's about community. I mean, in collective cultures, that is what we do. We eat together, laugh, and like the laughter was just amazing. I just wanted to record that.
So Vei, you also were practicing in or not practicing, you were learning a new medium. So community were learning lino, yeah, lino printing.
Yeah,
and how
so
that
we're learning lino printing, and this is the thing about being in diaspora, is that we have to, you know, do what the museum people call acculturations, you know, use new mediums to continue our practice. And I guess, you know, culture evolves. So kupesi, you need things that we don't have access to, you know, to make a traditional kupesi. So we use lino printing, and then it's so much easier than kupesi. Kupesi is intricate and difficult, and it's something that takes time. And I guess it's a kind of a cheater's way to make a kupesi. But lino printing, and everyone's just like, whoa, lino printing is so easy compared to the delicate and, you know, amount of work you have to do to make a kupesi, and it's important we continue that. But, you know, to also evolve, you know, and as people in diaspora, we're continually having to substitute material, you know, and that's just the way it is. But it's still part of that continual cultural practice, you know, we're just finding new ways to do things. And lino printing was so exciting for us. Everyone was like, whoa, this is so easy. You just draw it and then you carve it out and you print it and it's done, you know. Yeah, it was very exciting.
Thanks, Faye. Gina, I'll just go to you quickly there when we're talking about, you know, using traditional, some of your work is also carving.
Yeah, that is
true. And when we're looking at traditional ways of being in that, but you're also using found objects and carving, how do you work with that now, like the carving side of it? Yeah.
It's interesting because in Te Ao Māori, in the Māori world,
yeah,
you know, some tribes, women don't carve. In my tribe, in Ngāti Raukawa, women do. And so there's a cultural precedent for that. But also one of the things that I enjoy about being somewhere else is that I can also be someone else. So a lot of the, you know, you kind of get around things that may have been restrictions otherwise. But also, yeah, I enjoy, like Faye's saying, using new materials and finding uses for things that people don't want anymore. So a lot of my carving that's worn, I use beef bone. My father is a butcher, so I literally one time came back to Australia with like a shopping bag full of bones in my suitcase and kind of had to get through customs with that. It worked, but yeah, don't do that. The beagle was very interested in me, but you know, like, that's a waste product. and it's a product, there's so much of it that it's not funny, and it's to me it's really valuable, and because my father prepares it for me, it's even more valuable. But there's plenty of things that I can use in the community just around. And another thing about COVID, on your daily 5K walks, everyone was putting all of their stuff out onto the street, so there was just masses of materials about. But also Blak Dot, for people who have been there, know that it's in close proximity to savers and everywhere else, so there's heaps of stuff that's just, you know, easy to use. And so I guess the other thing, that because I'm interested in three-dimensional art and media, I want to, you know, part of that, it's a bit like, to me, what Vei was saying about birds and birds talking to you. Like materials talk to me, and I see things, I see other things, and just things that are lying around. And so it's assemblage rather than carving, but to me it's the same process. I don't see it as being any different to what my ancestors did, and I hope that doesn't sound arrogant, but yeah, I think it's that thing of, you know, Vei touched on it, that art is a Western word, art's is an English word. It's not a thing that I necessarily was born knowing about, but toi Māori and all of the cultural practices of all of the other women here, as Vei was saying, like it's in my genes. I don't have to think about it. And also it's a place where, you know, it's part of my life, and it's part of my everyday life, and it's part of my well-being. So if I don't do it, I'm sick. So if I don't listen to the things that those objects are telling me, then I become ill. And I guess that's another reason why I can't stop. It's a little bit obsessive. I can see people nodding. Yeah, because and to me, it's something that I believe my ancestors give me. And if I stem that flow, then, you know, I'm nothing.
So Astrid, thread in the background there as well is very important. I know watching you embroidered on Wednesday nights is just a beautiful way of you telling your story, but that collective story. And a lot of, because you do a lot of feminist readings and stuff, don't that you speak about politics, and do you want to talk about some of the things that come into that story of thread?
Yeah, the thread. Yeah, we now this is what we've been doing the past 2-3 years. Now we're changing the thread for plants, so we're kind of threading and weaving in a different way with the land. But yeah, this is these pieces are a kind of reflection of our getting together, discussing ideas about how we want to live, how we want to the way that consumption and capitalism is being leading our lives, and how the way that we want to escape that in trying to understanding our culture as this mixture. We call it mestiza. This mixture with this is not indigenous, is not white, is something in between and lives in the contradiction. And I guess that yeah, we feel that the thread and the knots are representing that too. In a way, in a metaphorical way, we are made of contradictions, and that's why if we feel that this is a really nice expression of all that it's constraining us, like all the things that worry us about how the world is lived, and how and the new ways that we want to take for our community, for our collective. So there is a lot about, we constantly talk about micropolitics, which is that there's these little actions that are in our daily life that can make big changes, because with the macro we can't really, it's like that's too big for us. So I guess that these simple actions, as just sitting, reading, discussing, embroidering, it take us back to that the simple, crafty, intellectual craftships that it's behind preparation of food, or of cultivating the vegetables in your garden, making your own products like shampoos and from herbs, you know, like medicinal herbs, like trying to, all that knowledge that is traditionally it's in us, we can recognize that. So we are, yeah, our readings are about that too. Is we are trying, I guess, that the embroidery and the chakra, the garden, is been taking us to more, like taking us away from the logical thinking of the academy and trying to take it more into the practice and the materializing that, our ideas. So yeah, it's a good way to bring us back here, you know, in the practice, in the doing. And yeah, because I guess that that's the point, in the little actions in the gathering, you're just making the effort to go every Wednesday to sit there and discuss. It's a massive, it's a crack in this structure that we live on, you know, like it's just there is in doing and making is when it counts. It's not just about speaking, it's just about, okay, we're gonna make the effort, the same as we did through COVID. You know, it was very hard to gather, but we were there anyway. We were working on that, making it happen, even though we couldn't go all together to the chakra to water the plants. We took turns and we make it happen. And I think those are the micropolitics that we are we can have in our hands, and we feel powerful when we have that. So we the same way that we are powerful when we are embroidering, you know, it's the same action. It's not much different. Yeah.
Thanks, Astrid. I just want to do a shout out to everybody who has joined us online today. Thanks for coming and thanks for tuning in. We'll maybe chat for a little bit longer, and then if you've got any questions and like to put it into the chat there for any of our artists, we'll be happy to spend the last 10 minutes responding to any of the questions you'd like to have answered. So we'll just keep chatting for a little bit longer. So we might move on to, if you don't mind, Astrid, you've got a project, because we're already on that yarn. So when we're talking with the artists that we're here with today, they've all been funded through the City of Moreland, and yes, we want to acknowledge that in a way, but also want to talk about what these little bits of funding have meant for either your collective or an artist in being able to, I suppose, coming out of COVID too, because I know to COVID, there was no money around. There was nothing around, let alone, I know, speaking for myself running Blak Dot Gallery, we haven't had wage staff in 10 years. And, you know, coming out of COVID, I didn't even have to ask for it. It was given to me. I've been asking for 10 years for some money just for a 3-day person to work with me, you know. So for me, not only coming at it's not a benefit, but, you know, it's been a hard slog for 10 years, but it's so beautiful having someone else to work with in Blak Dot, you know. So for me, that there's been its ups and downs, but that's been a positive for me. I think, Ngioka, yourself, having that extra time to develop your project in what that did for you, and how we've, you know, I think that time was muchly appreciated then, to be able to bring your dad into the picture with that. And I'll talk to Vei and Gina as well. But Astrid, one of the projects that you've come back with that is hopefully going to happen in the next few weeks, do you want to talk about the chakra program for that?
Yeah, La Fiesta de la Chakra. Yeah, it's a winter solstice celebration that we are preparing with the collective. Yeah, we are sharing, we want to acknowledge the land where we are. We want to bring all this traditional spiritual background from our land and share that with other cultures and from the south hemisphere. So that's why we invited Vei with the collective Pacific storytellers, and also some First Nation speakers from Wurundjeri, and yeah, with the purpose of sharing all the knowledge, acknowledging the land, and recognizing that we are part of this beautiful cycle, that we are part of the cycles of the earth too, and also celebrate this beautiful garden that has given us the opportunity to make this communal work, and find us in that space where we've been learning so much. So it's just being, because we feel so grateful. I think this is a celebration of with that spirit of acknowledging and yeah.
So we'll bring that I've just put the event page up on our website, as
great.
well as you have a Facebook page, but
yes.
Numbers permitting, we're hoping that will be open to the community, which will be a ritual and ceremony.
Yes, it would be a ritual ceremony, and we're hoping that we could have some performances from Chile, and some ritual where we're preparing with the collective, yeah, we'll see. We're at the moment we are having meetings with the collective to see how creatively we're gonna adapt to the circumstances. So we are not sure what is gonna happen, but it's gonna be beautiful. We are sure about that. It's gonna be amazing.
And when you're talking on the word adapt there, and I think we all have had to just recently again with this second lockdown. And the community workshops that you were speaking about, they were associated with the Rising Festival, and you know we were one day into that, and not only feel for you and the community members who participated in yours, but also there's 150 plus other artists who came out that other end of lockdown and, you know, have been working so hard. And I think Melbourne in particular, we were all looking forward to just getting out and celebrating art again. You know, we just finished the Yirramboi Festival, which was awesome just to be out and see community. But this was a bigger scale and a bigger picture. So, you know, my hats go off to everyone that, you know, contribute to even getting the opening night up and running. And what a beautiful night that was with the blood moon. It was so beautiful. I'm glad I went out that night. So Vei, one day into that festival, so those workshops contributed to a piece that you were involved in. Do you just want to, so I'm thinking about your capacity and how that then created another sense of community to be involved in a bigger festival. Do you want to talk about that little thing? What happened? Yeah, the lockdown, another lockdown. I'm trying not to say the lockdown word, even though we're in it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we worked on this project for like 3 months, and then we had one day to do it. And I was thinking, so my work was around Hina and Jona, which is a Polynesian legend around our moon goddess. And then the moon goddess sent us home afterwards, one day. And this is what, the blood moon does, it just creates chaos. And we were all just like, okay, we got to celebrate on the day of the eclipse, and then we all went home. But yeah, it was sad, but, for us, the joy is in the process, it's in the making, it's in sitting together with community. And I think we got that, I was sad that we created something that didn't come to life. We're still waiting to hear how it will eventually come to life, but the process itself was the whole thing, So we made kubesi with community, and we put it, so the legend of the eel, just in a nutshell for us, in Tonga is an eel who fell in love with our moon goddess, Mahina, who the moon is named after. And so the eel god came from the underworld, hid in her bathing pond. And this is a Tongan iteration, because each Pacific nation has a different iteration of it. Hid in her bathing pond. Every time she went to bathe, he turned into a man. They fell in love, or they were making love. And then her dad caught them at it one day, drained the pond, chopped him up. And so I had this chopped up bloody eel for this parade, but chopped him up. And as he was dying, or before he got killed, he recited a poem to Hina saying, take my body and feed your clan, but bury my head in shallow ground. And out of that grew the coconut, which is the tree of life in the Pacific. So that was his way of loving her and taking care of her forever, right? And that's that legend. But yeah, obviously Hina, the moon goddess, had other plans for us at Rising. You can honor me on one day and then you can all go home. But it was, so for me, the process, like sitting together with community. And so I got all these kids and community members who make a kubesi that told their stories. And then I used that for the skin of the eel. And it also was significant because the migration of the eel is from the Pacific to here, southeastern Australia, and then back. And that was a tie, for a connection for us. And it was symbolic of us as settlers here on this sacred land that isn't ours. But it has that connection where we come here, we grow and thrive in a foreign land, and then we go back and breed in the Pacific. And so it was a significant tie to, tying like our First Nations legends together, because the eel is significant here in the Southeast. So, and it was beautiful. And like, there's so many eels in this Rising Festival that I think it resonated that all our cultural histories kind of were intertwined. So.
And what did it mean for there was a lot of community members that came together to, help produce that, but you also coaxed them into being the performers, yeah?
The eel, the beauty of it was like this cross-cultural collaboration, working with, Jason Fu, James Nguyen, and Nabila Norden. And that is also part of our Pacific story. And, and I guess it's breaking down this white history, which kind of doesn't take into account all our interactions and our migration stories and all this stuff that is, because it's a white-centered history, they only talk about when they came, when they did that. And part of this process of working together with other, artists from around the world was that reconnecting the dots personally, like the Austronesian migration, which is how we ended up in the Pacific. And that includes Southeast Asia and then Asia. And then that connection and what resonates between us came out of working together in that. And it was so amazing, And I love that. Like, we need to we reconnect these things. We all had this relationship before, and it's just about joining the dots again, which is why Black Academy is important, because we get to sit together and we work on projects like South and
I was just going to bring up the South, so I can see 3 connections straight away on the screen there. Do you want to talk about just a little bit about that South? Because Gina, you'd mentioned it earlier as well.
So South is basically about, the global south, you know, the brown countries that were colonized and stuff, or whatever, you know, and all these names come in and out of fashion, whatever. But it's about our shared histories and our shared struggles, and talking about that. And, you know, when we had one meeting with Gina that Gina referred to before, and it was so powerful, we were talking, you know, we did, I think Parmen did a Peruvian song and chant, and then that sound for us sounded like the karanga and some of our ancient chants. And then we were like, you know, we've even colonized our music. Like, we use the Western tunes and tones, and we have this other music that, you know, that is dissonant to Western, but it's so powerful for us because it seems to reach into the spiritual world. And that the whole idea that, you know, that wailing, that chanting and stuff that we do, it is so powerful, it makes your hair stand on end. We've kind of like edited that out of how we make music, who we are and what we do. And this whole thing is like, and it's a job that we have to do. It's not, you know, like, we have to shed that imposed kind of Western lens and stuff that we self-imposed, or just purely by existing in a, you know, in the dominant culture of Western. And I mean, there's so many exciting things that we can explore, you know, like, wow, like doing chants and things that, you know, reviving, or not reviving, but resounding. Actually, I went to a thing with James Nguyen recently where he's resounding some of their ancient drums and gongs and stuff, and I'm just like, this is so exciting for us.
And Gina, you use sound, yes?
Yeah, I do. Some of the things that I make from bone are they look like very simple instruments, but they are things that are worn. They're things that are worn, and also often the breath activates them as well, so they have multiple voices. So they're percussive as well. And so, like Vei was saying about the drum that Parmen was playing, it's an instrument that appears very simple, and often post-colonization, particularly for this instrument that I'm talking about in Māori culture, people kind of put it aside because they thought it was a children's toy. But in fact, it was an instrument that often was played under chanting that would sometimes go on for hours and hours and days under very sacred practices. So, you know, those things for me, I don't know, touching on those things in the contemporary world and being able to bring them back, but bring them back in safe ways as well. I think that's the other thing that I want to say is really important about Blak Dot. And even the way that we're talking to each other, it makes the things that we're talking about contained in a space that is, it's a spiritual space. It's opened by a welcome to country, and it's opened by everybody kind of acknowledging where we are and who we are, but it's also closed and kept, like Ngioka was saying as well, it's surrounded by a holistic practice. That means that it can be, and that we can operate safely as well. So yeah, thanks for asking that.
Yeah. And Astrid, when we're talking about chanting and the drum, and I know that's when I've listened to you women over the last couple of years, that is very much come back within your group.
Yeah, we try to incorporate that too, the same as dancing. We like to connect with our bodies and through sound and dance. So we have a call it la caja chayera. One of the members of the colectiva has one, and we share songs with that about our readings, the things that are important for us, the things that come up through the readings and through the embroidery. Yeah, we would like to incorporate that into the ritual that we're planning to have for the winter solstice. So we will have something of that too.
And while we're on sound, Ngioka, I know your movement, but what does sound or music or that play in your art form? How does that
Well, with me and with my works, I use a lot of nature soundscapes to help tell story, and culturally, out of three Indigenous grandparents I have saltwater, one's freshwater, and so using the seascape of the ocean is also a huge part of my practice to tell my stories.
So I'm very much aware we've got about 5 minutes to go. Maybe just to I just want to kind of really ask for yourselves individually or your collectives. Do you see any challenges in the future? I mean, it's kind of weird. We're in this second wave now, whatever it is, that word. But also, how do you see the future in your arts or your practices? We'll start with you, Ngioka. Yeah. Not Gam and put you on the spot there.
Well, I think it's really interesting, like we've all kind of said, especially with dance and live performance, having to learn new tricks and new technologies in order to present works and show works is exciting. But then it's also, from a First Nation perspective, really special and really powerful, because even though I'm not on my own country, via new technology, I'm able to connect, to my family and to my country, via the internet. So it's kind of cool and exciting, but also sad at the same time. But yeah.
And Gina.
Well, I think one of a subject matter that I was looking at, or that came into my practice as I was at the residency, is I guess centering women more. And it's interesting being in this space with you all. I think particularly also aunties and elders, and acknowledging the work and lives of women who kind of lead us, but lead us in ways that are very different to what we're used to, or that what we see in Western models. So yeah, shout out to you, Kimba. Thank you very much.
And yourself, Astrid?
Yeah, I guess for myself, I think it's more connecting with the land. I think that all the answers are there, listening Indigenous voices from my territory and this territory that I'm inhabiting now. And I think for the collective, it's I think the chakra, it's part of that. We see we're in our future now. I think it's growing our veggies, and it's using herbal medicine and connecting through simple actions, through affections, through emotions with our community, and more and more communal stuff. Everything has to be communal now, because that's the only way to go. That's how I see the future, and I think the collective, it's seeing that way too.
And Vei?
So for me, I think I've come to an age where, some of my aunts and my elders have had health issues, and that's brought into sharp focus my responsibility as a future knowledge keeper. And I've been really lazy with that. And I'm now scrambling, and I've had these conversations with our cousins going, we're not ready. We're not ready, we're not ready to step up and be that generation. And we're so for me, it's about recentering my practice, decolonizing, sitting at the feet of my elders, documenting and doing my best so that I know as much as I can to pass on, And I think, I'm at that age where I'm I'm going to be the next elder generation, future knowledge keeper, and I haven't done my homework. sort of last minute assignment, and that's me scrambling to acquire as much knowledge.
Oh, awesome. So we're kind of nearly coming to the end, and like just really want to thank you, Mob, for coming and having a yarn. It's not the way that we usually would have a yarn. I was hoping we're going to do this live, because I think we feed off each other when we do that as well. You know, and I think, you know, we are using this medium as Zoom, and what you were saying, Ngioka, is to be able to connect with others on a different platform is good. But I know when we come together as communities or as individuals, that it's so important. And I think the lockdown, just like when the second one happened, I was a little bit triggered, but I'm like, no, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's only 2 weeks, You know, I think, you know, it puts a place like a gallery out of whack. You know, we had an artist that was about to open on that particular night, and to see her nearly fall to pieces, but to pick her up and say, no, we're going to get through this. And to just be able to maneuver things around. I will try my best, which I did. And, you know, we will open that exhibition, and she will have her voice and you know, be seen. I think it's important that we just still keep coming together as a whole. You know, this is not going to get us. It's not going to get us, you know. But I just want to thank you all individually for coming together for a bit of a yarn. And I want to invite Angela back from Arts Moreland to wind it down. Yeah.
Thank you, Kimba. Yeah, such beautiful words, and just incredible the amount of support that you provide the community through Blak Dot Gallery. It's really, really wonderful. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, to Kimba and Astrid and Gina, Ngioka and Veis, for your great conversation today. Really, really beautiful listening to your words, and the importance of culture to you all is like phenomenal. I also want to take this opportunity to thank some other behind the scenes people, Freya Gillard, who's been assisting me with making a Moreland program and has been making it all work so beautifully in the back end today. Thank you, Freya. And also Anna Held, who is not here today, but is also helping with the program. So I wanted to thank those two as well. For those of you here listening, we also have another Making It in Moreland session today at 1:30 on the environmental art space and the creatives or other creatives responding to climate change. So we'd love you to join us there. And we have another 2 events on Saturday the 19th, which you'll be able to find on our Facebook page as well. But just wanted to really thank you all so much for joining us today. And it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll sign off.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.